$39.99.
That's how much you should spend for a pair of pants.
$39.99. That's the high end for me. I'm gonna be honest. I like the old clearance rack.
Well, I don't even have to shop myself. My wife will do most of the shopping for me now. It's like I'm a kid again. Like when my mom used to shop for me. Anyway, rock and roll. We're sort of like jazzed up about sort of looking at the new inductee list for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Those who get snubbed, those who do not, and some of the goofy ones that are in there, and then some of the ones that are like, how did that person get in there? Why is this person not in there? But more importantly, then it gave us to the arc of like, what is rock and roll? Is it a bunch of like, dudes with guitars? Yeah. Or is there...
You nailed it. Way to hit the nail on the head right away. Damn.
Oh.
Sorry.
I hate him. That is funny though. Or is it the spirit of rock and roll? Because is it Lynyrd Skynyrd, or is it Jay-Z?
I mean, nothing against
Jay-Z circa 2008.
I like Jay-Z. Jay-Z's cool. I just don't know that it's rock and roll.
Well, I mean, it's classified as hip hop.
Yep.
But
it's good hip hop.
I don't know. Can we?
And there are some guitars in. Like he's got the cool little riff, and we were watching the video where he is kind of trolling Noel Gallagher for singing Wonderwall.
That was also something we were really enjoying. That's from 2008 in Glastonbury when Noel's like, I don't think hip hop and Kylie Minogue should be in
Right.
And then he's since apologized. And anything Noel Gallagher says is fine by my books, of course, because he's a living deity.
Well, I think all he was saying was it's traditionally a rock and roll, guitar-driven sort of festival.
Traditionally, but now the audience has changed.
The audience has changed.
And I think he's fully under. This is 12 years ago, 13 years ago. Right. So the world has dramatically changed. And it was changing then, and like the old school rock and rollers didn't want to see that. And I'm sort of welcoming of the idea of, as far as Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, getting a little more breath in there. Some of it's a little bit passe. Like when they're like Carly Simon, I'm like,
that's I mean, like to me, Jay-Z is way more rock and roll and way more deserving of being in the Hall of Fame than Carly Simon.
And I love Carly Simon. You're So Vain, great.
Oh, it's great. Well,
great
but it's
pop
just
folk song.
Yes. The guitar parts in that are made. There's a fantastic guitar solo in that song.
There's a good guitar solo.
However,
all about that.
I learned it not too long ago.
That's really?
Yeah, because I was doing this Women in Rock Night thing. Yeah, I know. We'll talk about it later. It's fine. I was the house man.
That just made me so happy. Continue.
That was the highlight of my night. I was like just waiting for it. It was like, oh yeah. But anyways,
old man in his leather pants here talking tough.
That's me.
But we are like Levi's sponsors today because you're wearing Levi's.
I'm wearing Levi's.
I've got a Levi's shirt on too. It's
an upgrade from my normal Target jeans.
This is a nice thing. God, if we had a Target, I would shop at Target.
This is Target circa like 2003.
Target's got good
jacket forever.
And now we just upset that one guy. It's like, I hate when you guys get off topic. I get so mad. It upsets me. I'm a hippopotamus.
Let's be honest. We barely have a topic to begin with.
I know. This is very vague. Spirit of rock and roll. Come on. Who cares about that? Nobody, right?
And that is the spirit of rock and roll.
Seinfeld is a driving force in our inspiration.
God,
that's what that is.
Yeah.
Somehow I'm moving.
All right.
Okay. That's in the video.
Never heard that.
I apologize. We'll see if that keeps going. It was terrible sound.
That's show business. When you're filming live.
Derek's gonna be like, why didn't they edit that out?
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
Because our editor doesn't like editing.
We'll put in funny things, but we'll take nothing out ever. Yeah.
That's like that was my wedding night.
But longer.
No, shorter.
Way longer. That's what I mean. The noise was way longer.
Oh, I need therapy.
Is that it? Is it over?
No. So I am like excited. And we were talking about this is a reach out there. Are podcasters rock and rollers in a weird way?
I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, so do you differentiate between like to me, there are podcasters that are like rock and roll. Like, yes, this is
Howard Stern.
rock and roll.
100% rock and roll. He might not be as much now because he's a grown up, but I'd still say he's got that spirit.
But is there a musical genre that is rock and roll? That if you're not that, then maybe you shouldn't be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't know. I could almost argue it both ways, right?
No, I'd say like if you encapsulate the spirit of rock and roll, I want you in there. You know,
So if you are a Hungarian throat singing monk, but you're pretty rock and roll.
I mean,
should your
I'd be
music
kind of
be in
into
the
it.
Rock and Roll?
I'd be like, I mean, it's like,
What would that, like, what boxes do you have to write?
and like then somebody throws in a didgeridoo.
It's supposed to be my bad, but whatever. I mean,
yeah, I could.
it's a really good. That was a good
Thank
throat
you.
singing didgeridoo.
I don't know what this is.
I don't know what. It's like you practiced that a lot. I don't know.
I was grabbing something. I'm just so happy now.
Spirit of rock and roll.
That's it for you,
dead.
ladies and germs.
There you go.
Boy, I flew in and my arms are tired. Get it? That's a good joke. Dean Martin. Take my wife, please.
I'm sorry.
Sorry for any. This is what happens when you take funny pills before you start shooting videos.
I had really low expectations for this video. It might be really amusing. Now, so that's good.
Maybe you'll watch this one.
I doubt it.
Doubtful.
That's not gonna happen.
Jonathan's like, I don't care. Just want to go home and cry.
So there you go.
No, so yeah, so
Rock and roll.
I don't do the didgeridoo again.
Loves those didgeridoos.
I do. The best is when you're at the airport and you see a guy traveling with the didgeridoo. Because you know that I've seen it like multiple times. I
don't think I've ever seen that.
It's so special. It's so special.
I
Because
want
it's
to
like,
see it now.
did you really need to bring your didgeridoo wherever you're going?
Got to practice.
I can't do my didgeridoo.
Maybe you went to a didgeridoo convention.
Maybe
You're a pro didgeridoo
or
player.
maybe that guy just likes to be seen with his cool weird instrument at the airport. But I don't know. This was a long time
All
ago.
things possible.
Yeah, because I've looked through like the whole list of all the inductees, and there's a few that you're like, well, that doesn't make sense to me. But maybe there was like in the time of it being inducted, there was some rock and roll element of what they did. It's tricky. Like I like the idea of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame encapsulating more than just like guitars and drums.
Yeah.
And bringing the spirit of rock and roll so it can still breathe and exist. And so there's the fresh new audience will go in there, and that way they will discover Sir Elvis Presley, and they'll discover Buddy Holly and Richie Valens, who is also in there, and they'll discover these greats that you never would probably ever consider listening to or knowing about.
That could be true.
Like for younger kids, so
Yeah.
that might you might have just known hip hop, but there's I look at the Beastie Boys too, and they sort of straddle that line a bit too, or the great Fred Durst of the Biscuits of Limp. I don't think they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and that is a travesty.
I don't know. Maybe one day. Fingers crossed.
God willing.
Maybe one day. Who knows?
I mean, with some of the nominations or the inductees in there, I think they have a place. Because there's some lame cats in there too.
How much like the stuff we see that we think, okay, maybe this is not so rock and roll. And again, I'm talking more like the weird Carly Simon or whatever. Is it because we're running out of rock, actual rock?
No, I think there's so much rock and roll out there. But sometimes there's these people that they get upset, like if Dave Matthews wasn't nominated, how could they do that? Well, he's still young in the scheme of things, and I mean, he's not to a younger generation, but I get why. And some people that maybe were nominated that were younger, but then let's jump back to these podcasters. Like we talked about, radio host, our first guy, Howard Stern. But, Joe Rogan has become a monster of influence and that sort of rock and roll attitude a lot. It's changed a little bit with Spotify.
Maybe so. I don't know. I mean, it's funny. Rock stars come to mean someone who just crushes it. Who they're just popular in a way. And in a time where we don't really have as many actual rock stars, right? They are in hip hop, or they're pop stars, or
they're streamers or podcasters in a strange way. And there's part of me that's okay with it as long as the spirit of it's there. I like we were big champions of. I love the old days of when like rock and roll artists were opened up by stand-up comedians. Like
That was cool.
we're hoping that comes back. Like, who wouldn't want like George Carlin in his prime, like opening for like Kiss?
Yeah.
How pumped would you be to see the show after he comes out and does some like, 15-minute expletive-filled rant of like just brilliance? Because George Carlin's one of like the masterful comedians of all history. So I choose him. I'm in love with Tom Segura right now. Like, not physically, even though he's lost a lot of weight. It's just, I think his comedy is brilliant. I love watching him. Have you watched his specials?
You're saying you like his didgeridoo?
His it's
Sorry.
coming in.
Oh, it came around.
No, but
I have not watched this.
I look at stand-up comedians as rockers. And we're like,
are.
Dave Chappelle is a rocker.
Yes.
Like 100%. Like some of these guys that are willing to push the button. George Carlin always pushed the border. Richard Pryor always pushed the borders. Eddie
So
Murphy
is that
did
the
too.
spirit of rock and roll, is pushing the boundaries?
Yes.
Cool.
I think so. And taking what was your formation of music? Like Beethoven is a rock and roller. Mozart's not a rock and roller. I love Mozart. He's one of the most talented musicians to ever grace this world. But like he worked within a confined system more, and he was like the encapsulation of what the classical period was. Whereas Beethoven was like, I love that stuff, but I'm gonna break those rules now.
Push the
Here
bounds
comes
a
the
little bit.
romantic period because I'm in it. And then you get like the Brahms and everybody. Like, oh, it goes on forever. 3-hour long overtures. But still brilliant. But no, but
The jam bands of their day.
is Dave Chappelle a reincarnation of Beethoven?
Yes. You heard it here.
You heard it right here. No,
I
but
saw it in a dream.
we could have been having some dreams this morning. You never know. No, I think it's I'm excited that rock and roll, like, it still does exist, and like we lose it sometimes with the commercialization of what the music industry has done and how fast the popularity cycle is. It's like, bam, you got a single, next single, next single, next single. No time for EPs or albums. Rock and roll, like, I mean, Pink Floyd could not exist today. You know, there's no label would give them the patience and time to develop, and we would have lost that. So we look for it in other places now. I look for it in streamers, I look for it in podcasters, I look for it in stand-up comedians. And I think that's where, if music and stand-up comedy can like intermix again like it used to in the 70s and the 80s.
It'd be a lot of fun.
I mean, like, you had what? Like Dean Martin was like getting opened up for by, like, probably Red Skellington and like old classic comedians like that. I'm an old vaudevillian comedian expert here. What am I doing? I love entertainment. I love the ones that always push the board. Like Gene Wilder. Brilliant.
So I can't afford an opening act, so I'll just start wearing a disguise, and I'll do a really bad comedy set before we play our mediocre.
No.
jam
You don't
bands.
have to pay your opening acts anymore.
Oh, okay. Oh, God.
They don't have to be paid anymore, because like
Fantastic.
Well, that's most people in the record business don't, or like in trying to make it. It's like, I'm going to open up for this band. It's like, don't you realize you actually have to pay to open up for this band? For the big acts, you're really not getting paid much. You're losing money because you're trying to get your act out there, and you might get paid a little bit.
Or you might, they just want you to do it for exposure.
It might be a
exposure
paid play.
bucks. Yeah.
I remember those days back in the final glory days of labels in the early 2000s, and those days have changed. But
I played for a guy in the Christian, like the CCM world, and it was like, oh, we'd like you to come open for us. All you have to do is provide lighting. You pay for the lighting. You're like, oh, God. It's just expensive on large tours.
And that is the opposite of the spirit of rock and roll.
Yeah.
I want to see some like flashlights like duct taped up to like some scaffolding. That's rock and roll. The Secret Machines was a band from the early 2000s. They used to use like the work lights. They would have a ton of them hooked up to a computer guy who would operate them. But that was their lighting array. It was like
I've done that
wall
before.
of work lights, a wall of them.
The wall. I've never had a wall of them.
Amazing. I know, yeah. Like I've had like 3 or 5.
4, yeah.
Like, cool, and then we would turn them on. We had somebody like clicking them on and off. That was our operator. But
You'd make the little homemade filters put on, so they'd be like blue or red or whatever. Yeah.
No, we
Good
just did
times.
all white, because that's what Secret Machines did. And we copied them entirely on that to a failed effort. But it was amazing. Check out the Secret Machines. Some like Everywhere Is Nowhere or something. They're some of their singles and stuff. One of the members of the band, unfortunately, tragically passed away years ago, so the band is no more. But a wonderful trio, one of the best sort of indie bands sort of in that same time period as like Interpol and the Strokes, but monster players. That guitar player and that drummer and the keyboard bass player that sang.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's on them. They were rock and roll. So is Langhorne Slim. he's folk. That's all I got to say.
Agreed.
Take me home, Johnny.
Let us know in the comments, what do you think is rock and roll? Is it like musical boundaries and confines, or is it a spirit, the spirit of rock and roll? We want to know what you think. Hit like and subscribe. Don't forget to click the bell so you don't miss videos in the future. Go play your didgeridoos. Don't forget to practice. We'll see you next time.